It's been kind of the worst kept secret in the hockey world that Jack Campbell, Toronto Maple Leafs goaltender, a guy that was universally beloved as soup in that community, is probably going to free agency and he's probably going to Edmonton. For some reason, we've had insiders leaking out that the Oilers have so much interest in this guy and that apparently he's going to be their next goaltender after Smith and Koskinen are out because, of course, you're going to need to get somebody in there to replace the goaltending now that everybody is gone. Ville Husso was a guy that was potentially on the move to be a target, but no, he got sent over to Detroit. You had rumors about John Gibson that were shut down by his agent Kurt Overhard, and now Jack Campbell is pretty much in a position where I guess you could say he's the odd man out. The reason for this is because yesterday the Toronto Maple Leafs made a trade with the Ottawa Senators in order to get Matt Murray onto their squad. Now, they did retain salary on Murray, the Senators did, which means the Toronto Maple Leafs are only paying about, what is that number, like $4.6-ish million a season for the next few years. And so when you consider Matt Murray and you consider Jack Campbell and how these two goaltenders could not have been more different in their performances from 2021-2022, it makes you really think, okay, Matt Murray is making X amount of dollars on the Maple Leafs cap. Is that amount of money so big that the Maple Leafs could not have just given Campbell that kind of money? Let's go over the entire Campbell-Edmonton thing and why Kyle Dubas might have just flubbed it here when it comes to trying to keep soup to stay. So, before we go over into Campbell, let's go over Matt Murray first and just highlight what he has been going through. Of course, he has had a lot of things off the ice that have kind of held him back from really being the best version of himself. We did note that he did bounce back statistically. He had a .906 save percentage this season in only 20 games played, but at the same time, you still saw improvement there. And there was a really good stretch that Matt Murray had in January that a lot of Leafs fans might want to look at now and say, okay, let's hope that we get that version of Matt Murray instead of the other stuff, because yeah, Matt Murray in his last year in Pittsburgh, for example, not all too great. His first year in Ottawa, not all too great. Plus the injury concerns, it's not really the most complete package in the world. But for Jack Campbell, he went out there and had himself a stellar year, a .914 save percentage, a .264 goals against in 49 games played, 31-9-6 was his record. That is bananas. Like, that is really gosh darn good right there. He also had a .921 save percentage with the Leafs last year and a .934 save percentage in the Montreal series in round 1 of the 2021 playoffs. He had a .181 goals against in 7 games played in that series, despite the fact that the Leafs ended up losing. Because Jack Campbell has been so good, and because he has been approaching UFA status this entire season, there's been a lot of concern amongst Maple Leafs fans as to whether or not Campbell would stay or go. But with these negotiations ongoing and with the seemingly visible divide between what both the Campbell party and the Maple Leafs party wanted, a departure via free agency seemed like somewhat of an inevitability at this point. Which is why, if we take a look at some tweets, this is what Pierre LeBrun said, I still believe the Caps are frontrunners for Darcy Kemper, but obviously Toronto is equally on the lookout for a goaltender to help if Jack Campbell lands in Edmonton on Wednesday. The goaltender carousel is always fascinating. Now, this isn't the only tweet we have had of Jack Campbell and the Oilers, but there are a lot more from other NHL insiders that have linked the two, to the point where if it actually does happen first thing Wednesday morning, I really would not be surprised. We'll make a video about it, sure, but like, it's not going to be surprising, if you ask me. This is where things get interesting, because the Carlo Koliakovo tweet that I wanted to bring up here was pretty much the same idea that we highlighted earlier. I honestly can't make any sense of choosing to go with Matt Murray at $4.7 million, which is $300,000 less than what Jack Campbell is going to make. Matt Murray, as we said, is carrying that 4.6 AAV salary. Jack Campbell is likely going to get something in that 4.55, maybe 5.5 if you're being really optimistic sort of range. So for Toronto, it kind of becomes a question as to whether or not it really is beneficial to be pinching the pennies as much as they have been. Now, there are some arguments in the replies of this Carlo tweet that highlight, oh, Matt Murray is younger than Campbell, and he has less term than what Campbell is going to get. Also, he has Stanley Cup rings, and the fact that he's also from the Sioux, which makes things so good, because Kyle Dubas loves the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds. Yeah, I know, that's probably not a good reason, but it's not gonna be dismissed as a non-factor. Here's a reply from Greg talking about the entire situation holistically. So, The Toronto Maple Leafs paid a first-round pick to rid yourself of an inconsistent goalie who was injury-prone at $3.8 million, talking about Peter Mrazek at the draft, to bring in a goaltender who's inconsistent and injury-prone at $4.7 million. Makes sense. Now, then, the same arguments still bring themselves up. Oh, Murray is younger, Murray has cups, etc., etc. But here's a tweet from Logan that kind of goes over things in a different light. Frank Saravalli said that the Leafs could have kept Jack Campbell if they would have made a serious offer earlier in the offseason. Now they are circling back too late, and he has moved on mentally. Pretty bad if that's true. It shows that Kyle Dubas totally misjudged the market and got left holding the bag. Logan says that Frank Saravalli said this comment on the Daily Faceoff show, as well as Kipper and Bourne on Sportsnet 590 this morning. He talks about it on both of those shows, but it's really interesting to me how Kyle Dubas is supposed to be this analytical cap genius that does what it is that he does, and all of a sudden, when it comes to negotiations with probably the most important player the Maple Leafs are going to have to re-sign, he ends up quote-unquote flubbing the bag. I mean, if you take a look at what Matt Murray ended up getting in the salary retained deal, if you just offered a tad more than that to Jack Campbell, I have a feeling he probably would have said yes. And now you're in a position where Campbell himself has quote-unquote moved on mentally, and that is not a good sign if you're really on the Toronto should re-sign Jack Campbell train no matter the price. If this guy is just going to go to free agency and he's already moved past Toronto in his mind, there's no stopping a moving freight train in that respect. No matter the money, they'd be able to go out there and muster. But hey, Lego, what if they just pay him an extremely high amount of money? Well, then you should have done that earlier, because now the guy doesn't want to play for your team anymore. He's probably going to go to Edmonton, and he's probably going to do pretty well there, considering the fact that Mike Smith is, old, and Mikko Koskinen is gone. You have yourselves an opportunity here for a guy that is a... oh boy, I was going to say proven winner, but no, that's not really too accurate to describe when it comes to Jack Campbell. I guess he is a good goaltender, probably the best one the Oilers are going to have in a long time, but at the same time, he didn't necessarily win any playoff rounds in Toronto, but is that really a reflection of his talent, or is that a reflection of the team in front of him? Who really knows? Talk to me in the comments, let your thoughts about that down below. But either way, Jack Campbell is a pretty precious goaltender. Not even just a goaltender, but a guy. We all kind of know that the Toronto Maple Leafs fan base loves this guy to death. They love his humility, they love how nice he is to people, and it's been such a nice little story to see him actually turn from a prospect that didn't really work out in the Dallas system, who barely got a shot in LA, to eventually becoming the Toronto Maple Leafs #1 guy and a player that they relied upon for the amount that they did, and in the magnitude that they did as well. They were really relying on Jack Campbell to be his best against Tampa Bay, against Montreal. Sure, they lost both those series, but I mean, Jack Campbell in Game 7 of both of those games was not bad. So either way, you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about Campbell leaving the Maple Leafs, where the Maple Leafs are going to go from here, and just how Matt Murray is going to do. Matt Murray, I don't really think it would be too fair to say he is going to be the definitive bona fide starter. They're probably going to get somebody else to maybe share the load as well, but consider the amount of money that Jack Campbell is probably going to get in Edmonton and ask yourself, okay, is this really something the Toronto Maple Leafs priced themselves out on here? Because at the end of the day, if they had an opportunity to re-sign him and they just didn't get it done, that's more of a reflection on them than I think it is anybody else. So talk in the comments your thoughts about Kyle Dubas, this notion that Saravalli highlighted on the show about how Kyle Dubas could have done the contract extension with Campbell but just didn't. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.